Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sunset TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. India and the Philippines have elevated their bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. The announcement was made on the 5th of August following bilateral talks between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President of the Philippines Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. The Philippine President is on a 5-day state visit to India, accompanied by First Lady Louie Marcos and a high-level delegation including cabinet ministers and business leaders. On Tuesday, he was accorded a ceremonial reception at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Wide-ranging talks between Prime Minister Modi and the visiting dignitary were held at the Hyderabad House in New Delhi. Both leaders took stock of the progress in bilateral relations across all domains, including trade, defense, maritime cooperation, healthcare, security, food security, development partnership, and people-to-people ties. The two sides signed 14 agreements and MOUs, which included finalization of terms of reference for cooperation between the three wings of our armed forces. Prime Minister Modi also expressed support for freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific, in line with the international laws. Listen.
Friends, हमारी एक्ट ईस्ट पॉलिसी और महासागर विजन में फिलीपींस एक अहम साझेदार है। इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र में शांति, सुरक्षा, समृद्धि और रूल बेस्ड ऑर्डर के लिए हम प्रतिबद्ध हैं। हम अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कानूनों के अनुरूप फ्रीडम ऑफ नेविगेशन का समर्थन करते हैं। अगले वर्ष फिलीपींस आसियान की अध्यक्षता करेगा। इसकी सफलता के लिए हम पूरा सहयोग देंगे। एक्सेलेंसी, India and the Philippines are friends by choice and partners by destiny. From the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, we are united by shared values. Our is not just a friendship of the past, it is a promise to the future.
Celebrating 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and the Philippines, President Marcos and Prime Minister Modi also jointly unveiled commemorative postal stamps themed on the national flowers of India and the Philippines. In Perspective today, we'll talk about the significance of the upgradation in India-Philippines ties, the 5-year action plan that will take forward the strategic partnership, and some key agreements that both sides signed during President Marcos' state visit to India. Joining me are two distinguished guests, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former Secretary MEA, and Mr. Pathikrit Pain, Senior Research Fellow, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on the program today. Welcome to Sunset TV. Ambassador, let's begin the conversation with you. The list of outcomes from President Ferdinand Marcos and Prime Minister Modi's meeting is a long one. But the biggest one, undoubtedly, is the elevation of ties between India and the Philippines to that of a strategic partnership. As someone who crafted India's Act East policy in ASEAN and beyond more than a decade ago, while you were Joint Secretary at the MEA, you also initiated Indo-Pacific dialogue with the Pacific Island states. How significant, according to you, is the elevation of India-Philippines relations now to a strategic partnership level from the point of view of India's Act East policy, but also the broader Indo-Pacific strategy of ours?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I would like to first commend our leaders for having crafted this partnership and taking it to new heights. Having a strategic partnership has very, very special value. I recall more than 10 years ago when we launched the Act East, Philippines was a significant pillar of that particular relationship, which included not only the ASEAN countries, of which Philippines is a member, but extended beyond. And later, when we launched into the Indo-Pacific, Philippines again was a central partner. As Prime Minister launched the Sagar and this year into the Mahasagar initiatives, Philippines again was a central partner in all this. Over the years, we've seen how this partnership has developed and grown in all areas, and our bonds have become even closer. So it's just justified that we have now elevated this to a strategic partnership. I must add at this point that this is a relationship that is multifaceted. And although in a strategic partnership, the level of trust and political understanding is very important, this is something that has grown not only at the leadership level, but at the working levels and at the levels of the people. And I think if you look at the list of agreements and memoranda that have been signed, it is a testimony to that. And it's a partnership that is only likely to grow as we look into the years ahead.
Okay. Mr. Pai, your thoughts on the significance and the importance of this upgradation in ties, both in context of a celebration of 75 years of diplomatic relations in this year, 2025, but also in context of the fact that India is only the 5th strategic partner for the Philippines.
This strategic partnership is extremely important. There are many areas of convergence between Philippines and India. One of the most important areas of convergence is the fact that Philippines is a victim of salami slicing and the creeping acquisition tactics of China. A significant portion of maritime area of Philippines is claimed by China, and many of the countries like Philippines in the South China Sea have literally their jugular held by China. So in many ways, for a long period of time, they were looking up to India to come as a counterbalance. If you look at what happened in Galwan in 2020, I think India has been one of the very few countries in the world, in that region, which could not be subjugated by China by its salami slicing or creeping acquisition tactics. We actually fought back, we pushed back, and we have showed them that when the push comes to a shove, we know what to do. And therefore, that's one of the reasons why this strategic partnership is extremely critical for Philippines. If you look at it, the defense cooperation that has been happening between these two countries, especially the BrahMos deal, is very significant for Philippines for its maritime security. And I think in the recent past, there were also information that Philippines is looking forward to buying even the Akash 1S air defense system, which itself played a very critical role during Operation Sindoor. And it's very clear that over a period of time, there will be vast areas of maritime cooperation between Indian Navy and Philippines Navy. And I think somewhere it is a way of counter response of ours as well, because the manner in which Pakistan has been armed to the teeth by China to actually create problems for India. I think the reciprocation by the government of India is a very positive step. We are telling them we can do the same when it comes to Vietnam and Philippines. But apart from that, the cooperation is not restricted only to defense as only. For example, Philippines has its own aspirations. It is a $500 billion economy on areas of, say, digital governance, where India has played a very critical role, has created template in the form of Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile, the JAM Trinity. I'm aware of the fact that they're very interested in that concept. Secondly, in areas of pharmaceutical, in areas of vaccination, the kind of strides that India demonstrated during the COVID crisis, where we indigenously manufactured vaccines and catered to the requirement of our own country. It's not an easy job. 1 billion plus people were vaccinated. Philippines has been very impressed by that. So there are major areas of cooperation and convergence in governance, apart from defense, and also economic cooperation as well. There is a huge potential for countries like Philippines to integrate the supply chain with Indian companies. And for a long period of time, they were looking for Indian companies to enhance their scope of operations in Philippines. And I'm sure over a period of time, Philippines will show the road to many of the other Southeast Asian countries. So overall, it is a very positive step. And I look forward to this being transformed into people-to-people relation as well. Many, like many of the South or Southeast Asian countries, culture plays a very critical role, be it in India or be it in Philippines. So cultural convergence itself over a period of time will play a critical role. And I think the lookist policy that Prime Minister has is actually getting showcased, transformed into reality with this kind of cooperation, where the defense might be the pivot of it, but it is not restricted to defense only. Education, health, technology. You never know, in the next few years, you might have Filipino satellites being launched by ISRO. You may not know that tomorrow startups of Philippines will be impressed by the startup policy of Government of India and would want to cooperate in that way. So I am very happy that these steps are being taken by Government of India, because there is a limit to how much you can push your exports in the Western hemisphere of the world. We need to look east. And this has been something Prime Minister Modi has been working for the last 10 years. It is now showing results. Back to you.
In fact, since you spoke about the cultural relationship, it's important to note that the commemorative stamps that were unveiled jointly by President Marcos and Prime Minister Modi, they were themed on the national flowers of India and Philippines, reflective of the cultural ties and the strong bond that both countries enjoy. But since you also mentioned the defense cooperation, Ambassador, we've seen how our defense and strategic cooperation with the Philippines has strengthened, particularly in recent years. The Philippines is the first foreign buyer of the BrahMos missiles jointly developed by India and Russia. Even after the bilateral talks that took place on the 5th of August, Prime Minister Modi asserted that as maritime nations, cooperation in the maritime domain is both natural and essential for India and the Philippines. Coincidentally, for the first time, while the Philippine president is in India, 3 Indian naval ships participated in a joint naval exercise with the country in the South China Sea. How significant are all of these? How reflective are these moves in context of our strengthening defense cooperation with a country like the Philippines?
I think we should look at this relations with the Philippines in a broader context of the changing geopolitics. The fact that the Philippines and we have engaged in a strategic partnership means that in the new era that is about to emerge, India will be a principal fulcrum for many countries around in our region. And the partnership between Philippines and India is one of those examples. The second one is that the maritime domain is becoming increasingly important. The rise of the idea of the Indo-Pacific is an instance of why the maritime domain will become increasingly important in the days to come, not only for preserving the sea lanes of communication, but also to ensure that there is a certain global commons that is ensured about the various seas, that there is freedom of navigation, that there is broader sense of cooperation and respect and abidance of the principles of the international law, particularly of UNCLOS. And I think what we did see is that in our document, the Declaration for the Strategic Partnership, there were very clear references to the South China Sea, the conditions of tension that are there, and how we need to go back to UNCLOS in order to preserve order over there. The aspect of defense cooperation has come about primarily because of the changing geopolitical situation in which there are rising tensions in the South China Sea. And I think, this was alluded to in the discussions as well. Our support to the Philippines for maintaining the security of the maritime domain and their sovereignty over the territories that they have as per UNCLOS 1982 is very significant because it's an assertion of a strategic partner in that particular context. As you know, there is a very strong alliance partnership between the United States and the Philippines. And in addition to that, there are other countries of the Quad and many others in the Indo-Pacific who've also been collaborating with the Philippines in this particular context. And therefore, the kind of defense cooperation, the naval exercises that we have conducted recently, there was also another one of a hydrography ship which visited the Philippines just as the meeting was going on. And I think all this in conjunction is an assertion of the fact that the new geopolitical flux, the new situation of global stability that needs to emerge will have to have a greater degree of cooperation on various fronts, and particularly on the defense front. And there has to be an observance of international law. And I think this particular example in which Prime Minister Modi and President Marcos Jr. have come out with these various agreements, including the strategic partnership, is a clear indication of the way ahead.
Mr. Pyne, in context of how our defense cooperation and and the elevation of our ties to that of a strategic partnership level, Philippines has also decided to join the International Fusion Center established by India for the Indian Ocean region. Give us and our viewers a sense of why is it important in the new geopolitical scenario that the ambassador just explained.
Well, first and foremost, the pivot of this itself, is based on the fact that India today is in a position to supply weapon systems to many of the countries of Southeast Asia and other regions of Asia who have been for long looking for cost-effective yet quality weapon systems, and India has been providing that. That's why Atmanirbhar Bharat was important for India. The Fusion Center comes from the fact that when it comes to in areas of cooperation, whether it is in technology or whether it is the maritime route, countries like Philippines has a limitation when it comes to the issues of how much they can guard the entire sea routes on their own. They have a limitation in terms of how much they can provide the capacity to counter countries like China. So from freedom of navigation is one part. The other aspect of it, as I already had mentioned, that the entire sphere of cooperation will invariably move forward from maritime security to technology and even in hardcore real-time technologies of future. So where you might also witness the whole concept of fusion being taken forward in terms of collaborations when it comes to development of blockchain, development of cloud computing, or the 5G, 6G, and even in areas of biotechnology. So I think what is happening now, what happened yesterday, is that they have opened the paradigm for expanding the sphere of cooperation that was perhaps limited beyond this in the past. And I think beyond a point, it might so happen there will be freedom given even to individuals, even to organizations, corporations, think tanks to envision what can be the other areas of cooperation. So I think maritime cooperation has its own importance primarily because there's a limitation of individual countries like Vietnam or Philippines to create that freedom of navigation, the independence of the sea routes. What has also happened is that, let me put it this way, the relationship between India and Philippines will be like the harbinger of how India's relationship shape up with countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam. For example, because of the cooperation between India and the Philippines in defense, in the recent past, what has also happened is that India has extended a line of credit to Vietnam to buy ships from India for its own coast guard. And at the same time, be impressed by the performance of BrahMos, which has been given to Philippines. Both Indonesia and Malaysia are at advanced stage of negotiations with India for buying the same weapon system, subject to the MTCR laws that it has to be below 300-kilometer range. So on a larger paradigm, if you look at it, maritime cooperation and defense will be the pivot, but it will invariably expand to other areas. Back to you.
Absolutely. Coming now to trade, Ambassador, which was another important aspect of the discussion between both the leaders. What we see and what the numbers suggest is there's been an increase in bilateral trade between India and the Philippines. It reached approximately $3.3 billion in the year 2024. Explain to us some of the areas in which we are trading extensively with the Philippines, but also how are we aiming to ramp it up?
Well, we have an old treaty relation with the Philippines as well, which is part of the understanding both bilateral and as part of the ASEAN free trade agreement that we have in goods. And while the first one, which is the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, is up for review and we are having discussions with many of the parties, there are certain carve-outs that the Philippines had sought in the past. And we are trying to address some of those through what we call a preferential trade agreement, which will be a bilateral agreement between India and the Philippines. So when we look at this combination of the PTA between India and Philippines and the review of the ASEAN free trade in goods, we will have the enabling environment in which trade can go ahead. In addition to the trade in goods, there is also a very strong level of cooperation in services. As you know, we are both very strong in IT and IT-enabled services. Philippines has emerged as a very strong BPO center. There are increasing possibilities for cooperation. In fact, I understand President Marcos Jr. is going to be visiting Bangalore as part of his state visit to India, where he will be, apart from engaging with, meeting with the people at the BrahMos production facility, he will also be having several business meetings which will look at the trade and investment cooperation. We also have increasing cooperation in textiles, pharmaceuticals, and certain organic chemicals where the trade has got great potential. We're also looking at collaborations within the Indo-Pacific framework so that we can have increased economic exchanges. As you know, when the Indo-Pacific Initiative was launched, and then while the focus in the initial days was on security, India was able to expand the ambit to the economic cooperation. And increasingly, many of the countries in the Indo-Pacific region are getting part of various of these working groups that we have. So at the level of the economic cooperation, the bilateral dialogue structure at the official level, as well as the collaboration between the business communities has been strong and growing. We see great potential for this in the days to come.
Mr. Pine, how significant do you see the free trade agreement? Of course, we've had agreements with a lot of countries in the area of free trade. We are negotiating with several countries. We're in the process of sealing the deal. But a free trade agreement between India and the ASEAN, of which Philippines will, of course, be a key member. How do you see that as a game changer in the broader economic ties?
Well, first and foremost, the agreement, the free trade agreement that we have with ASEAN has certain challenges, because unfortunately what has happened is that ASEAN has become a route for China to dump products into India via ASEAN. So I think that is subject to review right now. What we have witnessed over a period of time is that India has been far more successful and is more comfortable in terms of bilateral trade deals or bilateral agreements, free trade deals, rather than multilateral agreements. So that's why we did not join the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, whereas on the contrary, we have a very successful India-United Kingdom Free Trade Agreement, or the one which is being worked out with Australia as well. In terms of, in case of Philippines, I think there is a strong potential for collaborations and a possible creation of a free trade agreement. And I think that will again be a template that we would have similar individual bilateral free trade agreements with different countries of ASEAN, and perhaps at the same time while we exit the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement. The fact is this, there are certain things that India can provide today which for a long period of time, ASEAN countries or countries of Southeast Asia rather, we were completely dependent on the West. In that way, India has emerged as a country which can give those products, technology products, high quality industrial products which are cost effective yet quality. At the same time, when it comes to Philippines, there is one issue that we would be very interested in: contract manufacturing. Philippines has over a period of time has developed that proficiency when it comes to contract manufacturing. Many American companies over a long period of time have invested heavily in developing that kind of proficiency when it comes to much of the products get manufactured in Philippines. So how much Indian companies can leverage that, we have to see. But I think Philippines would also look for opportunities, whether people of Philippines can get an opportunity to come and work in Indian companies, that we have to see. But the fact that in the recent past, this news also came that Adani Group is investing almost like $10 billion in Vietnam in development of port and other areas. I think Philippines will be very interested in looking for how much of their foreign direct investment can come from India as well. And I think that is one area where I think Indian companies would also be very interested. How they work out, well, that we have to see. Free trade agreement, it has its own nuances when it comes to individual countries. It all depends on how much we get what we want and how much they get what they want. So that depends on very, very minute negotiations over a period of time. But I think for countries like Singapore, which are looking for quality products at a cost-effective range, I think India does offer many things. What they are comfortable when it comes to a free trade agreement with us is that, unlike other countries, we do not have a habit of dumping our products in another country and completely stranglehold them. So I think they're looking for an alternate, not just in the realm of trade, but also as a country which can help them in their development paradigm in terms of also giving long-term developmental finance loan for infrastructure development, help them in turnkey projects, and help them to develop or go to the next level of technological development where they can fulfill the aspirations of their own people. So on a concluding note, it is not just free trade agreement, it is also foreign direct investment, it is help in development of infrastructure, where I think a lot of cooperation will be explored. How it will work out, well, only time will say, but I think it opens up major areas avenues for India as a major player in the ASEAN or Asian region rather. Back to you.
Ambassador, taking on the point that Mr. Pyne made about greater cooperation in areas, now that India and the Philippines are strategic partners, can we explore the possibility, or are we already exploring the possibility of India and the Philippines building resilient supply chains in order to reduce dependence on China, particularly in areas of, say, electronics, pharma, etc.?
Yes, indeed. I think what this strategic partnership offers is that you can not only look at the areas in which you have natural advantage, but also begin to look at areas which have a future orientation. And so apart from the economic side, which we discussed, where we will be building more connections, and this will be not just in terms of trade in goods, but also include services and investments. And as was also pointed out, it would also include development projects. There was specific reference to quick impact projects, which we will do, which will actually benefit the people of Philippines. We're also engaged in the development of human capital. And so, the training under ITEC and so on will actually become big parts of it. I think the big focus that will really happen over here will be in some of the future-oriented aspects. Defense, of course, is one of the key ones in which we've discussed already. The other area that will see a big boost will be in terms of space collaboration. And I think what we will see is much closer cooperation at the level of building of satellites. And of course, India's launch capabilities of satellites is well proven. And so we will see much more closer collaboration between the two sides in that aspect. We will also see Indian DPI's digital physical infrastructure come into Philippines. There have been many understandings and agreements on this. The Philippines is very keen to develop a very robust national identity framework, and they've been in touch with us through a center in Bangalore. And I suppose, the deal will be concluded perhaps when the president is over there. In addition to that, we will also be facilitating them in terms of how we can extend the UPI to various other places so that the DPI system that India has developed, which is robust and based on an open source platform, will be available to more and more countries. And that, in a sense, is also another assertion of the kind of capabilities and technologies that India can provide and make the connections even deeper. So I see not just the collaborations in current cooperation, but building the foundation for future-oriented cooperation, technology being a very key player in all that.
Absolutely. We've spoken about how we've strengthened our collaboration from defense to trade. We're working out on a free trade agreement as well. But people to people and cultural diplomacy is something that forms the bedrock of our relationship. Mr. Pyne, with shared democratic values, also a growing Indian diaspora, not to forget, also in the country, how can people to people ties be further institutionalized in taking this relationship forward?
Well, that's a very important aspect. First and foremost, there can be, university level collaborations and cooperations. That's a very interesting area. In fact, Philippines has one of the best, management institutes in the whole of Asian region, which is the Asian Institute of Management. I think there can be potential possibilities of many Filipino students eventually getting scholarships to study in India. Second is invariably tourism, which is part of the entire framework which is being worked about. Many people from India do visit Thailand. I think, Manila can also come up as a very, very potential area of tourist visit. Likewise, when it comes to, heritage tourism or religious tourism, India does provide a major area of cooperation, a major area of destination. Many people from the Southeast Asian origin, though not necessarily Philippines, have interest in the Buddhist corridor that has been worked out in India. I think defense tourism is one part. University level cooperation will be another. The other will invariably be as part of cultural cooperation. Would be having Indian movies being showcased in Philippines. Music of Indian origin have always had a special place in Southeast Asia, and I think that can be, film festivals have always been a great way of, taking forward, basically cooperations. And last but not the least, the Philippines has a history, a rich cultural heritage. So traditional handicrafts have always been, or handicrafts have always been of huge interest, especially among the elite or the upper middle class people. So there are many areas. Invariably, you can have those Philippines month in India. Similar things happen with other countries where they would be showcasing their culture, heritage, ethos, philosophies, and economic development in various parts of India. And I think that can be a way forward. There are multiple avenues opening up, and as I stated, this would be a template for many of the other Southeast Asian countries to follow in terms of how you develop, relationship with the fourth largest economy of the world. For a long period of time, for many of the ASEAN countries, the issue has been that if they have to develop cooperation, they always used to look either towards China or to the Western countries. They never had a third alternative. India comes as a third alternative, which is neither Western, it's a non-Western country, and yet it's not a country which will impose its foreign policy on you. So tomorrow, if the cooperation improves and enhances, we will not tell Philippines what to do when it comes to their foreign policy.
Absolutely.
And that is where I think many countries like Philippines are comfortable. So when you are comfortable with a country, your people cooperation invariably goes up. And you would invariably see, as the cooperation at the government level, defense level goes up, economic level goes up, invariably a lot of people from Philippines will invariably be coming as tourists to India. So certain ways, in certain times, you don't need to do anything, it happens organically. And I think
this clearly reflects in the statement that the Prime Minister made, that India and the Philippines are friends by choice, friends by destiny, partners by destiny. Ambassador, I'll take one last question from you. So looking ahead, now that India and the Philippines have announced a strategic partnership, we have a 5-year action plan to take forward that strategic partnership. What should be the top 3 priorities for both countries to take this relationship further, make the strategic partnership truly transformative?
Well, I think the first one would be clearly to work collaboratively towards having greater cooperation towards what's emerging as the new balance, so the new harmonious balance in the geopolitical situation that is in so much of flux, particularly in the region around the Philippines. And so whether it is in defense and strategic affairs, we are also working collaboratively on the security front. There were 2 very important agreements that were signed, which was on the transfer of sentenced persons and mutual legal assistance treaty, and the kind of collaboration that we will have on counterterrorism efforts. So that is one front, which is to look at what the future is going to be like in terms of the geopolitical changes. The second is what it means to our people. And in that, I would really place center stage for the kind of development cooperation that we are going to have, the economic collaboration, the connections between the people, and the cultural connections that you talked about, increasing the e-visas are going to be made free for the Filipinos, and Indians can now go to the Philippines without a visa. So these are big changes. And the third shift is, I think, which is very specific, but I think it has very specific and important importance because we are really engaged in the maritime domain, particularly when we look at the region around us, which is the Indian Ocean, and the Philippines, which is abutting the South China Sea and the Pacific. And as we go from the Indian Ocean towards our ideas of Sagar and Mahasagar, we are looking at increasing complementarities in various fronts. So whether it is in terms of the collaboration of the Fusion Center, which you mentioned, which is based in Gurgaon. This is like building upon what we used to do earlier about controlling piracy in the Malacca Straits. And today we are looking at everything from Aden across the Malaccas out to the South China Sea. So the maritime domain is going to become very important. Both of us are very important seafaring nations. We both have very large numbers of people who are seamen. And so we want to collaborate on that. We are also countries that face many of these humanitarian disasters, because of climate change and others. And so humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, we went out when the cyclone struck the Philippines, and we helped them at that time. So this particular maritime domain and the collaboration that happens in that particular region, ranging from the security dimension to the humanitarian aspect, is something that's going to be a big focus in the days to come. And I think we shall see a relationship that is going to become more and more robust as the days go now.
Absolutely, rightly said. So these collaborative and collective efforts on part of both countries is what will make our relationship a promise for the future. With that, we'll have to wrap up the conversation. Time allows me to take up only that much on this edition of Perspective. Thank you once again, Ambassador Bhattacharya, Mr. Pyne, for joining us on the program and sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. To you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.